The sisters in Islam, firstly thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala once again. Allah's granted us the tawfiq and the ability to have performed the Maghrieb Salaah with Jama'ah. Alhamdulillah. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says indeed that man alif al-majid alifahullah, that whoever loves the house of Allah, in return you will earn the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we make dua that the masajid be beloved to us. When we make dua, Allah accept our salah with Jama'ah. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. Beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, last week we've spoken about Imam Suyuti rahimahullah started the chapter where he spoke about the qabr and the seriousness and the horrors that appears that will happen in the grave. And he mentioned how the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, the story of Uthman radiallahu anhu, that whenever he used to sit or he attend a janaza, he would sit on the side of the janaza and he would cry to the extent that his beard would become soaked with tears. One narration mentioned that one day Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was attending a janaza and the Sahaba was sitting around Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam started crying. And when they saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam crying, all of them started crying to the extent that the earth became wet. So much they cried. And then Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam instructed the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, where he says, فَأَعِدُّوا, that make preparation for this grave, prepare for this grave. Invest in this dunya that Allah has given us, the time and the health and the strength Allah has given us. Use it to invest and to beautify your grave in this grave that one day you will go into it. One day all of us is the first abode of the akhirah, the last house of this dunya, which all of us we have to go into it. We have to enter this grave and we need to beautify this grave. In this evening chapter is where Imam Suyuti rahimahullah speaks about one of the ways a person can attain or one of the ways how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala widens the grave of a person. Normally when we see the grave of a person being buried, it's very narrow. There's no place to move. Besides the hole being small, when they put the planks over you, then it is even more restricted. The sand over you even more restricted. So the first narration Imam Suyuti rahimahullah speaks about the fadlul maut fil ghurba, the virtue of passing away in a strange place, in a place where you weren't born. And he mentioned a narration where he mentioned that a person توفي الرجل بالمدينة فصلى عليه رسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. One person, a man passed away in Medina al-Munawwara, and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that يا ليته مات في غير مولده فقال رجل من الناس لما يا رسول الله. So a person passes away in Medina and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that if only he died in a place that wasn't his birthplace. Doesn't take anything away from the fadl and the virtue of Medina al-Munawwara, but the ulama mention, they say that if only he wasn't a resident of Medina, if only he was someone who didn't live in Medina, someone who traveled, passed away in Medina, but his birthplace was in Medina al-Munawwara. So then says Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so someone asked, Ya Rasulullah, why? What is the virtue of someone passing away from his hometown, the birthplace where he was born? And then Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, إن الرجل إذا توفي في غير مولده قيس له من مولده إلى منقطع أثر في الجنة. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that when a person passes away from his home in a different town or different place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs the malaika to measure the place from his house where he was born, the place where he was born, and the place where he passed away. So for example, if I was born in Port Elizabeth and I passed away in Johannesburg, the earth they will measure from here to Johannesburg what is the distance. And that amount, in this specific narration the ulama mentioned, that amount will be added in space in his Jannah. That space will be added in his Jannah. In the second narration, Imam Suyuti rahimahullah mentions where it is Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu narrated, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that يُفْسَحُ لِلْغَرِيبِ فِي قَبْرِهِ كَبُعْدِهِ عَنْ أَهْلِهِ. That for the person in his grave will be widened to the extent of the distance where he passed away, the distance from his family. So he's a resident in Port Elizabeth, he passed away in Joburg. That amount of distance, few hundred kilometers, imagine that will be added in, Allah will add it into to widening your grave. To that extent, for a person who passes away in a strange land, a strange way, he wasn't born in. And this just shows again how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala look for reasons and for excuses to grant so many blessings and bounties upon a person. And that's why Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned in this hadith, in the following chapter, Imam Suyuti rahimahullah mentions that a grave of a person, says Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّمَا الْقَبْرُ رَوْضَةٌ مِّن رِيَاضِ الْجَنَّةِ أَوْ حُفْرَةٌ مِّن حُفْرَ النِّيرَانِ. The grave of a person, it is either a garden of Jannah or it is a pit from the pits of Jahannam. It is either a place where we find pleasure and delight, a place where we find enjoyment. We can only imagine what will be the gardens of Jannah like. What will be the gardens of Jannah like? So here Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that either person, his qabr will be a Jannah from the gardens of Jannah, or a garden from the gardens of Jannah, or it will be a pit from the pits of Jahannam. And again, my beloved brothers, sisters in Islam, me and you, when it comes to beautifying our graves, when it comes to working towards beautifying, like how we're mentioning how we work and put an effort to beautify our homes in this dunya, likewise, the same concern and effort needs to be in our minds that how will my grave look one day? Sometimes you worry about the outside. Sometimes we worry about how our grave will look outside. We instruct our children to, when I'm not there, then build something around, see that there's grass planted, see that it's clean. More important, we need to make sure that what is going to be inside the grave, what's going to happen in the grave. We need to teach our children, instead of worrying outside, read and make it a habit to read Surah Yasin on behalf of our ruh, send the Quran to recite, make sadaqah on behalf of our ruh. That will benefit us in our grave, not the beauty outside the grave. That will benefit us in our grave. And likewise, what we do as individuals while we are alive, the deeds that we do, salah that we perform, the Quran that we recite, many hadith speaking about the Quran being a companion for a person in the grave. Surah Al-Mulk that we recite, a means of protection in the grave. So many hadith of Rasul, so many teachings speaking about how a person can protect himself from the adhab of the qabr, and how a person can beautify his grave. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who will use our life and our energy and our strength to beautify not only our homes in this dunya, but also beautify our grave. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it such that our graves be a garden from the gardens of Jannah, and protect us and not make it a pit from the pits of Jahannam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the understanding. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.